5 years ago, when I first met Masha, she was everything I ever dreamed of. Bright-eyed, funny, and full of life. She had a way of making me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. We were young and naive, fresh out of university, and for both of us, it was our first serious relationship. A year after we met, we got married. It wasn't a grand wedding. Neither of us had the money for that, but it was perfect in its own way. 2 years later, our daughter Margarita was born. The first time I held her in my arms, I felt like my life was complete. We had the love, the family, the future. Or so I thought. The first year of Margarita's life wasn't easy, though. I was working overtime at 2 jobs to make ends meet while Masha stayed home, taking care of the baby. I knew she was tired, emotionally and physically. She spent her days feeding, changing, and rocking Margarita to sleep, while I came home exhausted, barely able to spend an hour with them before crashing into bed. We were a family, but we were also just surviving. One day, Masha's best friends invited her to join them on a week-long trip to Turkey. "You should go," I told her. "You've earned it. You deserve a break." I'd been saving up for something special for her, and I thought a vacation would be the perfect gift. I didn't even hesitate when she agreed. I paid for the flights, the hotel, and even some spending money. I took Margarita to my mother's house for the week, confident that Masha would come back refreshed and recharged. What I didn't realize was that this trip would be the end of everything. 5 days into her trip, Masha called me. At first, I thought she wanted to tell me about the beach or the sightseeing. Instead, her voice was cold, emotionless. "I found my true love," she said flatly. "His name is Salim. He's everything I've ever wanted, and I'm staying in Turkey. I want a divorce." I stood in the middle of my mother's kitchen, my mind spinning, unable to process her words. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You have a husband. You have a child. You're married to me." "I've made up my mind," she said. "I've never felt like this before. I'm coming back only to finalize the divorce and sell my grandmother's apartment. I don't need anything else from you." For 2 days, I didn't sleep. I sat in silence, staring at Margarita's tiny, sleeping face, trying to make sense of what had happened. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over. How could she do this? How could she leave us? And who was this Salim who had so easily stolen my wife away? When Masha returned, it was as if I was standing in front of a stranger. She packed her things with a smile on her face, talking about how she couldn't wait to start her new life with Salim. She talked about how they were going to build a future together, and how Margarita wouldn't be coming because a child wouldn't fit into their plans. Her cruelty was astonishing. My love for her turned to cold fury. "You can leave," I told her through gritted teeth, "but don't expect me to make it easy for you. You can take your grandmother's apartment, but I won't give you a penny more. You're abandoning your family. You don't deserve anything from me." She shrugged as if it didn't matter. "I don't care. Salim, and I will make it work. Goodbye, Alexei." And just like that, she was gone. The first few weeks after Masha left were the darkest days of my life. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, panicked, thinking she was still lying beside me. Then reality would hit me like a punch to the gut. She was gone. The only thing that kept me going was Margarita. Her laughter, her tiny hands reaching out for mine, her innocent questions about where her mommy was. They were the only things that kept me from falling apart. I made a promise to myself. I would be both mother and father to her. I would give her all the love and stability that Masha had thrown away. In the meantime, I tried to learn as much as I could about Masha's new life. Through mutual acquaintances, I found out that she and Salim were living in Antalya, spending her grandmother's apartment money like there was no tomorrow. They were going to fancy restaurants, staying in luxurious resorts, and living a lifestyle she could have only dreamed of with me. I hated her for what she'd done, but I told myself I had to move on. For Margarita's sake, I needed to focus on being a good father, not on my anger. 6 months after she left, I ran into Masha completely by accident. It was a cold winter day, and I was walking home from work when I saw her standing outside a coffee shop. At first, I thought I was imagining things. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be living her happily ever after in Turkey. I almost walked past her, but she saw me. "Alexei," she called out, her voice trembling. I stopped, unsure of what to say. She looked different. Her makeup was smudged, her clothes were wrinkled, and there was a desperation in her eyes that I'd never seen before. "What are you doing here?" I asked coldly. She hesitated. "Can we talk?" I didn't want to, but curiosity got the better of me. We sat down in the coffee shop, and she started to tell me everything. It turned out that her true love, Salim, wasn't the Prince Charming she thought he was. Once the money from her grandmother's apartment ran out, his affection for her disappeared. He started drinking, gambling, and eventually hitting her. One night, after an especially violent fight, she packed her bags and fled back to Russia, humiliated and penniless. "I made a mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I loved him, but he used me. I've been staying with my parents, but I don't know what to do. Alexei, I'm so sorry for everything. Can you forgive me?" I stared at her, my mind racing. This was the woman who had abandoned me and our daughter without a second thought. And now she wanted forgiveness? "You're sorry?" I said bitterly. "Do you have any idea what you did to me? To Margarita? You left us for a man you barely knew, and now that things didn't work out, you expect me to take you back." "I don't expect anything," she whispered. I wanted to apologize. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Part of me wanted to throw my coffee in her face and walk out. But then I thought of Margarita. "If you're so sorry," I said, "then prove it. Be a mother to your daughter. She's the only reason I'm even willing to listen to you right now." Masha nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I want to. I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, Masha tried to rebuild her relationship with Margarita. She visited regularly, played with her, and tried to make up for lost time. Margarita was cautious at first, but slowly, she started to warm up to her mother again. As for me, I kept my distance. I wasn't ready to forgive Masha, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. But seeing her really try, to be a better person gave me a glimmer of hope. One day, Masha sat down with me after Margarita had gone to bed. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said, "but I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've done for our daughter. You're a good man, Alexei. Better than I ever deserved." I didn't know what to say. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something other than anger toward her. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was closure. Only time would tell whether we could ever truly move forward. But for now, I was content to focus on what mattered most, giving Margarita the love and stability she deserved. Masha's betrayal had changed everything, but it had also taught me one important lesson. Family isn't about blood. It's about the people who stand by you, no matter what. Masha's return had shaken my life in ways I wasn't prepared for. Watching her interact with Margarita was a strange, bittersweet experience. On one hand, I was glad my daughter was finally getting to know her mother again. On the other, I couldn't help but feel anger bubbling beneath the surface. Was I just supposed to forget everything? Despite my reservations, Masha kept coming back. Week after week, she showed up to take Margarita to the park, to her dance classes, or to just spend the evening playing games and reading bedtime stories. My daughter's happiness was obvious, and that alone was enough for me to tolerate Masha's presence. But one day, Margarita asked the question I'd been dreading. "Papa," she said, her big eyes looking up at me, "will Mommy live with us again?" I froze, unsure how to respond. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" She fiddled with the hem of her dress. "Because I miss having a mommy, and I think you miss her too." I knelt down and pulled her into a hug, my heart breaking at the innocent hope in her voice. "Margarita, Mommy made some mistakes, and we're still figuring things out. But no matter what happens, I promise you'll always have me." She nodded, but her question lingered in my mind long after she'd fallen asleep. Did I miss Masha? Could I ever truly trust her again? It was a quiet Thursday evening when Masha showed up at my door unannounced. Margarita was already asleep, and I was in the middle of sorting through some paperwork. I opened the door to find her standing there, clutching a thermos of tea and looking nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked hesitantly. I let her in, unsure of what to expect. We sat at the kitchen table, and she poured us both a cup of tea. "I need to say something," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I've been trying to make things right with Margarita, but I've realized something over the past few weeks. I don't just want to be her mom again. I want to fix things with you too. I stared at her, stunned. Masha, you can't just come back into my life and expect everything to go back to the way it was. I don't expect that, she said quickly. I know I hurt you, Alexei. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. But I've changed. Losing you and Margarita made me realize how selfish I was. I want to prove to you that I'm not that person anymore. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. For so long, I'd been focused on my anger and resentment that I hadn't even considered the possibility of forgiveness. But could I really give her another chance? I don't know, Masha, I said honestly. It's not just about me. Margarita deserves stability, and I'm not sure I can risk her getting hurt again. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, but I'll keep trying, Alexei. I'll do whatever it takes. A few weeks later, Masha approached me with an unexpected proposal. I've been thinking, she said, nervously twisting her hands. What if we went to family counseling? Not as a couple, just as parents. For Margarita's sake. I hesitated. The idea of sitting in a room and airing out all our dirty laundry didn't exactly appeal to me. But at the same time, I couldn't deny that it might help us create a healthier environment for Margarita. All right, I agreed. But this isn't about us getting back together. It's about doing what's best for our daughter. The first session was awkward, to say the least. The counselor, a kind woman named Irina, started by asking us to share our individual goals for the sessions. Masha went first. I want to rebuild trust, she said, glancing at me. Not just with Alexei, but with Margarita too. I want to be a better mother and a better person. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath. I want to make sure Margarita grows up in a stable, loving environment. And I want to learn how to co-parent with Masha without letting my anger get in the way. Irina nodded thoughtfully. It sounds like you both want the same thing. What's best for your daughter? That's a good starting point. Over the next few weeks, we worked through our issues, one session at a time. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to storm out of the room, and moments when Masha broke down in tears. But slowly, we started to make progress. One evening, after another counseling session, Masha stayed for dinner. Margarita was thrilled, and for a moment, it felt like we were a normal family again. After Margarita went to bed, Masha and I sat on the couch, sipping tea. There was a comfortable silence between us, the kind that had been missing for years. Alexei, she said softly, breaking the silence, do you think there's any chance we could ever start over? Not for Margarita's sake, for ours. Her question caught me off guard. For months, I'd been telling myself that forgiveness was impossible, that the damage she'd done was irreversible. But as I looked at her, I couldn't deny that a small part of me still cared. I don't know, I admitted. It's not something I can decide overnight. But maybe. Her eyes filled with hope, but she didn't push me for an answer. That's all I needed to hear, she said with a small smile. Months turned into a year, and little by little, Masha and I rebuilt our relationship. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always pretty, but we both worked hard to create a better life for Margarita. We started spending more time together as a family, picnics in the park, game nights at home, and even a weekend trip to the countryside. Margarita was happier than I'd seen her in years, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Margarita chase fireflies, Masha turned to me. Thank you, she said. For what? I asked, confused. For giving me a second chance, she said. For believing in me, even when I didn't deserve it. I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said. Our journey wasn't over, and I knew there would be more challenges ahead. But for the first time, I felt like we were moving in the right direction, together.